Well, welcome. Thank you for joining us on this Saturday. So, my name is Erin Stine, and I am the Director of Undergraduate Admission here at Parsons. As you've already realized, our associate's programs here are a little unusual in that those programs are actually not meant for high school students or typically someone's first foray into more advanced education at all. The associate's programs at Parsons started in 1996 out of our certificate programs, and the majority of those students in that program already have bachelor's. Would you apply as someone who's 18 or 19? We would actually take your application, withdraw it, and ask you to apply to one of our bachelor's because that's actually the most appropriate pathway. We don't have a traditional associate's program here at Parsons. But I'm very glad that you're all joining us today, and I'm excited to talk to you more about the bachelor's options that we offer here. Parsons is a part of the new school. Overall, we have about 10,000 students here on our campus. You're sitting within the lower level of the university center. Of that 10,000 students, about 5,000 of them study at Parsons School of Design. So that's between 5,000 our bachelor's, our associates, our master's students, all typically studying visual art, design, or business. We can talk about those various offerings. The programs that I'm particularly going to talk about today are our BFA and BBA programs. So what we offer is architectural design, art, media, and technology, which is actually a program that's only on our Paris campus, but I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Communication design, which would be the same thing as graphic design. Design and technology, which is really for someone who's thinking about coding, moving media, even robotics, so someone who's really thinking about the more hardwired side of design. Fashion design, fine arts, illustration, integrated design, interior design, photography, product design, strategic design and management, which is actually going to be a little bit different from the rest of these in that our strategic design and management program is a business degree. So everything else that's up here is a BFA, a Bachelor of Fine Arts, whereas the strategic design and management program is a BBA, a Bachelor's of Business Administration. For the most part, the start for those students here at Parsons is the same, but it is going to track very differently because it is a business program. Students also, if you're applying as a first-year student, so you can apply undeclared. So if you're really not sure and you're looking at these offerings and thinking, okay, I don't quite know yet, that's absolutely fine. But undeclared is only an option that you would come in with your first year, and then you would declare your major by the end of your second year. So everyone here at Parsons, if you're just starting university for the same time, would start in the Parsons first year. And what that is a pathway of study in which you're taking 3D design classes, 2D design, drawing and imaging. There's a really key course, or actually set of courses called the Integratives, which is Integrative Studio and Integrative Seminar. That class is both first and second semester freshman year for all of our students. And in that course, it's 9 hours a week, 6 credits. It's team taught by 2 professors, one who's working with you on your intro to studio practice and making, and the other one who's working with you on your intro to critical reading, writing, and research. So those things are never apart here at Parsons. Those are happening in the same classroom space because we want our students to make things about what they're reading about, and then to be writing about what they're making. So that's a very kind of circular process in what we do. When a student applies to Parsons, you do choose a major on the application unless you are applying undeclared. So when you fill out the application, which lives on the Common App, you would select one of these, even though your first year is going to look the same for all students, because you'll get more specific in year 2. Students also have the option to minor at Parsons. So we have over 50 minors right now, and that list keeps growing. You could choose to minor in another design discipline. You could also think about minoring in another area of the new school. So it could be a minor in French studies or food studies. It could be a minor in entrepreneurship. It could be a minor in music studies. So not only do you have the full array of offerings of Parsons at your disposal, but the array of offerings that we have here at the new school overall. A minor is going to be 6 classes within a specific area. Students at Parsons cannot double major. It would be the choice of a major and minor. And you don't have to minor either, but it's another great option to really utilize what we have. As far as the application itself, our application is on the Common App. So the Common App, if you're not familiar yet, is a universal application system that's used by several hundred institutions in the United States. Makes it a little bit easier to fill out your core information and then sort of specialty requests from each individual school. Do keep in mind, and I think this has been a tricky thing for us here at Parsons, the bachelor's application is only on the Common App. If you look at our website, you see, oh, the associate's program and the master's degree program is in a different space. If you are not intending to do those programs, don't fill out that application. You don't need to do two. It's solely on the Common App. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about today is how a student applies to Parsons. So the kind of things that we look for and also the kind of work that we find really inspiring throughout the process. So one core part of the application for all of our students at Parsons is the Parsons Challenge. So the Parsons Challenge asks you to pick a theme, an idea, a concept, and interpret it in 3 ways. So that means create 3 pieces of artwork around the same common idea, and then write a short paragraph about each of those pieces. And I always think it's easiest to kind of take a look at that, what could that mean? So this was a young lady who chose her subject as purses, as handbags. And what she thought about was, it's so strange. We have these objects that we carry with us. They just hold our stuff. Sometimes they're really expensive. Sometimes they're status symbols. So she decided to kind of comment on that a little bit by making these prints onto plastic bags and then setting them up in various situations and photographing them. This one's kind of my favorite. So the writing that she included with this was not about the actual physical act of making these pieces. Instead, it was about how these ideas came together. So how did she expand upon that original idea of a purse or a handbag? So the writing was really letting us know about how she's thinking about what she's creating. I can probably take a guess at how the physical process worked in her making this, but I'm really interested in what her ideas might be. This is another one on yawning. So yawning is this sort of strange thing that happens to us fairly regularly. Happens in a group setting. It's contagious. It actually sort of has this strange scientific aspect to it. And so this student decided to approach that in a few different ways. A really simple subject matter, but sort of these various angles of how that could work. I always feel like yawning when I look at these, so I won't be offended if any of you need to right now. So we're going to talk about the BBA program in particular. So the BBA is that Strategic Design and Management program. That is our business program. That is the only program at Parsons that does not require a portfolio as a part of the application. And for those of you who also just sat through the session upstairs, these are all the specific requirements for our bachelor's degrees. The associate's program is very different because it's usually used as a career changer, whereas our students coming into our bachelor's program usually have at least a little bit of exposure to art and design, either in a classroom space, private setting, maybe it's something that you're working on by yourself and you're making and creating all the time. But this is the only program that does not require a portfolio. They still have to do the Parsons Challenge if you're interested in the business degree, but instead there's an essay that asks you to basically creatively analyze a problem and write a 1-page essay about that. It could be on anything. It could be something really complex, like a situation that you were a project manager for, maybe you ran your school play, all the different elements that went into that. It could also be on something like a time that you moved a mattress from New York to California. That's still one of my favorite ones. But really letting us see how you write, how you construct ideas, that's what we're looking for as a part of that essay. So the portfolio. So that's going to be required for all of our Bachelor of Fine Arts program. Again, everything except that business degree. And a portfolio could include any type of art and design media. So it could be paintings, drawings, photographs, digital media, 3D work, web design, animation, whatever you think that you are best at. So, and I think that's really important to emphasize, and that also while you choose a major on the application itself, I don't expect your work to look like that major yet. And what I mean by that is, just because you're interested in one day being a product designer, that doesn't necessarily mean that you've ever taken a product design class, that you've ever had the chance to do a project that was that specific. And we know and understand that. And we really want you to shine in the media that you have had a little bit of exposure to, that you've had some feedback on. For example, Also, say you're interested in fashion design, and you're making sketches by yourself. Maybe you've never taken a fashion design course ever, and you've taken it upon yourself, and you have a wonderful sketchbook that you work in every day, but no one's ever been able to comment back and say, hey, these proportions are a little uneven, or hey, can we work on how you're shading or working with watercolor or pencil in this way? It's really, really hard to produce work all by yourself in that sense. So that's why it's okay, even if you're interested in interior design, to include only oil paintings, or it could be only digital pieces that maybe have nothing to do with interiors. That's what we're anticipating. So your work, your portfolio should be 8 to 12 images of the best work that you're capable of creating, regardless of what the media might be. If anybody here today is a transfer student and you're thinking about coming in at a higher year level, that's slightly different. So if you've gone to another institution where you've taken, well, really for second year, the threshold being 15 credits of art and design coursework, plus 9 credits of liberal arts. That's the threshold for what a sophomore would look like at Parsons. So you've taken some studio classes or creating classes at another institution. If you were coming in as a transfer student in that regard, we would anticipate that your work would be a little bit more specific because you're essentially bypassing our first year experience. So just kind of keeping all those things in mind. And I'm happy to talk later if anyone has specific questions with that. So I think we could just talk about portfolios all day, but it's kind of more fun to take a look at some of them. So a portfolio for a BFA application to Parsons, again, should be 8 to 12 images of the best work that you can create. And sometimes that includes your sketchbook. Sometimes that's pieces that you're working on in a quick way. It's your ideas kind of just coming out on paper or whatever it is that you work on. Could be something that you're exploring the figure, but you also have different pieces and elements and layers and collage happening. Again, it could be faster. Portfolios aren't these perfect, pristine things. They're, I think, often something that might be in progress. You're still working. You're still getting out your ideas. Could be doing some layering, some mirroring, combining traditional and digital imaging. You can also play with that 8 to 12 images a little bit. So what I mean by that is 8 to 12 images doesn't mean that it can only be 8 to 12 singular pieces of work. It could be that you say, I really, and maybe this example, you could take it or leave it if these two are related. But you could say, hey, it's really important that when the committee looks at this, that they see these pieces both together because I created them at the same time and space. They're drawing from the same common idea. You're welcome to do that. It could be, so this being a diptych, so 2 images. Could be a triptych, could be 3. Could be just arranging a couple pieces of work to kind of get a little bit more in there. So it doesn't need to be 8 to 12 singular pieces in the moment. It could be pieces that are observational. Could be things in which you're making and creating in graphite. It could be something that you're drawing upon in having these different elements. So this is quite simply a painting and collage on cardboard. It could be something like an app or a mobile design. Could be taking a look at something just really straightforward and digital. Could be product design. Again, this sort of opportunity, and this one makes me smile a little bit because I think in this particular case, I'm not so sure this hand drawing really had as much to do with these other pieces. But you can certainly see how the top piece absolutely are sort of these mirrors and related to one another, and they're kind of working with the same color palette in this one here in the lower right. So it's just a kind of conglomeration of these different quick sketches, these little, they combined both these stamp moments with a more finished graphic design sort of product-oriented piece. Could be found objects in different moments that you're combining. Could be something that was really installation-oriented. Could be, working with something that either is in movement, it's frozen. This was really about this corner. I love that they included a shot with a young lady in it just to kind of show a little bit more size and perspective. Could be something performance-based. This particular presentation doesn't have any video in it, but you're certainly welcome to use it. All of these items and images are uploaded in a program called SlideRoom. So Slide Room is an online imaging system actually used by many art and design institutions as a part of their application process. So if you're applying to art and design schools, you'll see it probably more than once. So you can upload all these things together. It could include something from YouTube even. It could be something more like a glitch. Really, there's different ways that you could choose to approach it. I often see things like, say you've made a book and you want to show off more than one image from that book, or you don't want to use the entire portfolio just on the book. You could choose to make a little QuickTime video kind of showing off those different pages. You could arrange them in different moments on the screen. I love this particular image because it's a way of approaching fashion design that doesn't have to be so technical, that they're really taking a moment and saying, okay, I want to look at this color, these different shapes and blocks, and I really want to approach it in a way that I can kind of play with these in a more graphic sense, rather than having to be this perfect designed thing. So that was kind of a nice way that this is a student who really hadn't taken a fashion design course and said, all right, I'm going to be creative and I want to play with it. This was another student actually who kind of had the same thought. Sometimes, especially for something like fashion or product or even architecture or interior design, those are majors and worlds in which you're going to work three-dimensionally. You're going to work with objects, you're going to work with spaces. And this student just wanted to explore that. So he just had these rolls and rolls of mesh and was wrapping them around his body and kind of playing with these different shapes and structures. I had someone in a presentation last week talk to me about how they raised their hand and said, do you think this got moldy? I think probably. I don't know how long the shelf life was on this guy, but I love this as an example of what a found object could be. Again, playing with digital. One thing I also want to comment on, and this particular piece, which I also happen to know came from a summer program that a student worked within. So he was in a course where this was happening, which is why it made it a little easier to do. You'll notice all of these pieces are really cleanly photographed. That does not mean that they were professionally photographed, but at least getting whatever your work is in a space where there's natural light, where you don't have a lot of distraction in it. So for example, I don't want to be looking at this piece, because you could approach this very differently. You photograph in your art classroom, I see your best friend in the background, there's your hand, maybe there's your bedspread. I don't want anything to take away from the work that you've worked so hard on. So just thinking about that, again, it does not need to be professionally done, but at least make sure, and I know this seems obvious, but I can't tell you how many times it does happen, your images have to be in focus. They need to be oriented in the correct direction. These are all really careful moments. So even giving yourself time when you're applying to schools within the program itself to make sure all of those things are really cleanly done is very helpful. And this was actually one that I happen to know it wasn't shot in a studio space at all. They took it in a corner of their room. They just happened to have a window open really brightly behind them and just a little digital camera. So it's certainly possible to do. If you're really struggling with that aspect, it's definitely something to ask someone for help on, because it makes a difference when you think about applying to a university and you have committees of people looking at the work that you've worked so hard on. You want every moment to really let that art and design work shine through and not let there be any distracting technical details. Could be something that's more narrative or storytelling. Yeah. Are there any questions so far about the portfolio or any aspects of that? It's all making sense? I'll keep going with a few more items then. So we also asked for an artist statement as a part of our application. The artist statement is really going to be a moment for you to talk about what do you make, why do you make, how do you make it, where do you visualize going, why do you want to study here at Parsons. And I will say, and I think it applies not only to us, but really with statements, be it an artist statement or a statement of purpose, the ones I read that are most memorable are also the ones that are usually the most specific. So one thing I often see is that a student starts their essay with the words, when I was 5, or when I was 3, or when I was very small. And for many people, I think they're remembering the first time they picked up a set of pencils, or they had a paintbrush in their hand, or they started cutting fabric, and that's an amazing moment. It's really important to who you are. But what I often notice is that a student can easily spend the majority of a page on that particular moment, And then by the time you get to the bottom, there's only 2 sentences in which, okay, I really want to go to Parsons and study this thing, where I would love to know more about what's influencing you right now. Who are your teachers in high school that you're really excited by? Maybe on a trip to Parsons like today, you see something that's really amazing to you or hear something about what we do that you're really excited by. Those are things that I think really are great moments to draw upon, or what you're making even within your classroom where you're saying, hey, I did this thing and this piece and it's really amazing, or I really look up to this particular person. Take the time to talk about those moments. It really lets us know where you're at right now and also how we could help you here. How do you want to be a part of this community? So deadlines. So for our fall 16 class, the deadline for the bachelor's has passed. However, the application is still open. So if you are interested in studying a bachelor's program at Parsons in fall 16, I would go home and start that application today. We will continue to roll our applications while we have space, but it is a very, very critical time of year in how you think about that. Otherwise, if you're interested in spring 2017 or fall 17 or farther out from there, that application will open in September at the beginning. So there's a little bit of time left. If you are a transfer student, you do have a little bit more time. You have until March 15th. So there's a little bit of time left to go as far as completing some of those moments. But again, it's just something I think that's really important in this timeline, and definitely it's confusing since our associate's degrees are very atypical from other schools and programs. That's not always clear. We understand that, but I would recommend that you start very soon. Any other questions so far? Yes. It's a quiet group today. We're still waking up on a Saturday. So as a few other moments and comments, here we have a shot of where we are right now, of course, at the University Center. So as far as next steps and what we're looking at, today we offer the opportunity to tour our campus. So if you want to take a greater look at this building or our housing, that's certainly something that's available to do today. As far as other events in the future, you're welcome in the fall. We'll have a bachelor's open house that will talk specifically about those programs. Also, during the week, we do campus tours every day. So actually, Saturday as well, it's just on a much smaller scale than what a day like today would be. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we have 2 tours each day, as well as a specific Parsons information session at 1 o'clock each of those days. So that's always available to you. I will also say if you're ever interested in having a portfolio review, we do them from 2 to 3 p.m. every day here on our campus. So if as you're working and making and creating, you have other ideas that you're coming up with and you want someone to take a look at it, that's certainly something that you're welcome to come in without an appointment. Our main welcome center is at 72 Fifth Ave, so just across the street where you entered. We'd love to see your work and what you're making, so that's certainly an option as well. The tour that we'll run today is mostly of this particular building, so shows off the University Center. And we do have 2 of our dormitories available, Loeb Hall and 13th Street, which 13th Street is particularly a freshman dorm. But we do offer housing actually at 4 different locations. So there's certainly opportunity to continue on and look at other places on other days. We just don't have everything open on a Saturday. So any other questions today? Oh, I can hardly believe that. Yeah.
The Paris program.
Oh, yes.
Is there any intention to offer those classes in New York in the future?
So, and I'm so glad you asked because I jumped right by that and didn't dive into it. So thank you. So Parsons Paris, let's talk about that a little bit. Parsons Paris offers 3 degrees for all 4 years. So meaning that if you wanted to study at that campus, you could study the business program, strategic design and management. You could study fashion design, or you could study art, media, and technology. Art, media, and technology is a program that is specific to Paris. It's really about hacking, coding, quite a lot of elements of graphic design and web. That major does not exist here in New York, but that doesn't mean that those courses are not here. Design and technology is, or communication design would very much probably be the programs that you would study here in New York. It's a very small cohort in Paris. Our Paris campus is in the 1st arrondissement. It is absolutely a very different experience, but a very wonderful one from what it would be like to be here in New York. Paris has about 300 students at any one time. So size and scale, we're talking about 10,000 to 300. So it is a very different look and feel. If those three programs are not your area of interest, that's fine. You could still go over for a year or for a semester as a part of an exchange program. Say you wanted to do interior design. We don't offer that in Paris. We don't have the space or the build labs, nor will we probably ever for something of that size and scale, whereas we do have those kind of spaces here in New York. But say you wanted to go over for a semester and get some credits there, that's certainly something that would be possible for part of your studies. In Paris, it is our curriculum. It's us, and it is taught entirely in English, although we would really recommend that you would be taking some French courses while you're there. Does that help? Do you have more questions? No? I'll go here while, yeah.
What does financial aid look like?
Yeah, so a really important part of financial aid and scholarship is the application process itself. So we are 43,580 in tuition per year. All of these elements I'm talking about as far as the Parsons Challenge, the portfolio, sending us your transcripts, are how we consider students for scholarship. So taking the time and care on all of those things, I mean, ideally we want students to be writing really well, to be making and creating technically and conceptually, and have a high academic standard. Our average is an unweighted 3.3, so we would like to see a B plus range or higher. So those are all things we'll take into consideration in the application itself. And then for anyone who's a US citizen or permanent resident, filling out the FAFSA is going to be really important. Over 80% of our students receive financial aid in some form. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah, of course.
So if I apply, I would be a transfer student.
Great.
And I'm working on liberal arts. So what kind of classes would you recommend?
Okay.
While I'm in liberal arts right now.
Perfect. So the question is about being a transfer student, but coming from a liberal arts curriculum. So one thing that's really important to know is that our degrees that we offer, either Bachelor of Fine Arts or Bachelor's of Business Administration, meaning that core components of those degrees and programs are either in business or studio. So while we can absolutely transfer a certain number of liberal arts, most of our year levels are based off of studio credits. So for example, if a student came to us and they had 0 studio art classes, while they could transfer in, say, 30 liberal arts credits, they would still start in the first year program. So it's definitely something that's great to do, but it's really important to remember that that's how our year levels are based. I would say probably the most straightforward and transferable credits, and you could take any combination liberal arts, but certainly critical reading and writing classes, art history is really helpful, really any history or science, but I would say that there's only so many that we can take. It usually caps at about 30. So if there were more liberal arts beyond that, they just don't fit into our curriculum, because overall about 60 to 70% is a studio component. Yeah, we can definitely talk more if you want to ask about specifics of that. Yeah. Yeah.
You have working professionals teaching as well. Is there like some job connection after graduation with them?
Absolutely. So careers are, a huge part, I think, about being at Parsons, about being in New York. About 80% of our faculty are adjunct, so they're still working in the industry. I think that's a huge and important part of what Parsons is. For example, one of our alum came in the other day, and he had just gotten back from Paris on a photo shoot, and he graduated from the photography program in May 2015. And I said, "Oh, who did you go with? How'd you get that job?" And he's like, "Well, I'm a photo assistant from the teacher that I had my very first semester of being at Parsons." So even though that teacher actually doesn't teach anymore, she's still an active photography professional, and he still works for her now 5 years later. But the actual careers department here helps our students with their resumes, their cover letters, mock interviews, taking a look at your portfolio. It's definitely something that students should take advantage of while they're here. Most of our students will do at least 2 to 3 internships while they are still in the program. That could be sort of in a maybe traditional, or what I think of as traditional internship in a summer month, or it could be during the school year. It could be something a little bit smaller. We had a student who was doing the window displays at Anthropology on Fifth Ave from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. every Friday. Not the hours I would choose, but that's how they could work into their schedule something really interesting and great to put on their resume, but it wasn't like it was 2 hours every day. It was a very kind of focused amount of time. So there's a lot of ways that would look. But it's definitely something we encourage our students to be actively engaged in. We do 2 job and internship fairs a year. This past fall is actually the first year we got too big to hold it on campus, and they held it at the Metropolitan Pavilion. It was a 2-day event with about 130 employers that came for our students. Yeah. Anything else? Okay. Well, I will wrap this up today. I did ask if you are interested in a tour. Actually, right where you came in that kind of top of the stairwell is where the campus tours will meet. Same for if you want to get the layout for housing today. You're welcome to go out there and they'll get those started in a few moments. I also have my colleague at the back, Heather Foman, who is also here today. So if you need to catch somebody else on the way out from admission to ask any specific questions, you are certainly welcome to do so. And I will absolutely be hanging out here for a few moments to answer anything else. I do also have the books that are specific to our bachelor's program with me today. Heather has a few too. You're welcome to keep the associate's books if you're also interested in that down the line. But you can collect them all today if that's what you'd like as well. So we just have a different set. But thank you so much for joining today. I hope you enjoy seeing the campus and have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.